I want to move into the Kubernetes side a little bit just to show you that. So yeah, let's go right into the Kubernetes stuff. So again, we're going to maintain that like platform app split. So I'm going to go into the base folder in Kubernetes. And in this base folder, I also don't have anything up right now. So I want to get this applying first, and then I'll talk about it. So I'm going to do Terraform apply. Let that run. And while that's running, I will talk about it. Again, platform team, product team, right? We have that base infrastructure, app infrastructure split here. Let's say that your platform team is a Kubernetes team and they want to provide you a Kubernetes platform to deploy on. Well, they would probably do something like this. They would use Terraform. And this, in this case, like I'm assuming that the Kubernetes cluster does not exist, right? This is a greenfield deployment now. So let's say the platform team wanted to provide Kubernetes to you. Well, they would probably do something like this. They would spin up Terraform using the DigitalOcean provider. Here's the authentication block, right? Again, from environment variables. Give a region, New York City 1 is where I'm deploying. And what do I want to deploy? I want to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. And this is actually why I chose DigitalOcean over something like AWS, because deploying Kubernetes in DigitalOcean is like really cake compared to doing EKS in AWS. So that's one of the reasons why I chose DigitalOcean for today. But I'm the platform team. I want to provide Kubernetes for my app teams. I can use Terraform to create the Kubernetes cluster. And you'll see on my left-hand side window, the Kubernetes cluster is creating. And I think this probably takes about 2 to 3 minutes or something. And while that's coming up, I will explain the other side. So again, this is the base infrastructure. This platform team is creating that Kubernetes cluster for you to use. And if we go onto the app side now, so app, you'll see that the app team is going to just consume that Kubernetes cluster. It's going to use a data source. It's going to read the Kubernetes cluster that you have out there. It's going to be like, great, I see that. I'm happy. And then it's going to configure the Kubernetes provider with the correct credentials to communicate with that Kubernetes cluster. And mind you, we're doing all of this via this data source. So we have no like credentials to manage, right? Like it's reading this stuff that the platform teams provided to us. And it's saying, here's the endpoint you're going to connect to. Here's the kubeconfig token you're going to use. And here's the CA cert that you're going to use to connect to this Kubernetes cluster's API. And with that, we can create our deployments, our stateful sets, our services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is actually almost done. It looks like this blue bar is almost there. So I think in testing, it was like 3 to 4 minutes. So I don't expect it to take much longer. But while that's happening, so me as the app team now, I can use Kubernetes and I can start deploying to it. And I have a choice to make here. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and say like, use Terraform for everything. Oh my God, Terraform. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. Use what's best for you. If you're a Kubernetes shop that's already using like Helm or your own deployment stuff, stick with that. Kubernetes is a great platform to deploy to, and there's many ways to deploy to it. But if you have nothing, well, Terraform is not a bad starting point. So you'll see here that I have 4 resources here in this configuration file, and you can ignore my commented out block here. This is just me putting the Kubernetes config file in my local home directory so I can use kubectl, but I'm not doing that right now. In this Terraform file, I have 4 things. I have 2 deployments and 2 services. Oddly familiar to what you would expect in like Kubernetes YAML. I have 1 deployment for my to-do application, and all it is a Kubernetes deployment that spawns 3 replicas of my container, and it uses like the database to connect to it, right? And my favorite temporary password for like public demos and stuff, if it's free, it's Terraform me. I love that password. You'll see that I'm exposing my application over a load balancer service. I'm creating a deployment for my database, my Postgres database. I'm using a deployment. I probably should be using a stateful set, but I didn't want to deal with the volume claims and all that right now. So I'm using a deployment of 1 replica. This is my Postgres database, and this is my service to expose that Postgres database on a node port. Now, if all of that is kind of like doesn't mean anything to you, this is literally what I'm doing from the Kubernetes side. This is the YAML file, right? Deployment, service, deployment, service. So if you like are more familiar reading Kubernetes YAML, this is essentially what I'm doing. This is the YAML. So that's that. The Kubernetes cluster is now deployed. So now I can start deploying to it. So let's do that real quick. Let's go to app. Let's do Terraform apply. And you'll see that, oh, I did have my local config file set up. That's fine. You'll see that Terraform has read the Kubernetes cluster exists. It's going to now deploy my 2 deployments and my 2 services to Kubernetes. And we should see a new to-do app coming up very shortly. So I'll say yes to let that go out. And if I go into DigitalOcean's control panel, they give you a nice view. I'm going to come to that chat in a second. I just didn't read it yet. If I go to my DigitalOcean control panel, they give you access to the Kubernetes dashboard. So I can actually go into the Kubernetes dashboard here and see like what's going on. So if I look at this, I can see that I have pods that are coming up. I have my to-do app, right? 3 pods for the to-do app, 1 pod for the to-do database. I can look at the logs. I can see the database is ready. I can go back and I can see that I meant to pods. I can go to the logs for my app. And once this loads, I should see that my app is running, essentially is what I'm trying to say. Let's go to another one because, eventual consistency, right? Yep, of course. I love when things aren't ready yet and you're just like, there you go. So you see my app is running, it ran the migrations, and forget about this unknown error, I think, since this is just new, DigitalOcean. Yeah. Cool. So I can see that my workload has been deployed to Kubernetes. And the only thing that is in progress now, I think, is the load balancer, because the load balancer takes a little bit to create, but that load balancer is actually creating, because I use a Kubernetes service of type load balancer, which really creates a DigitalOcean load balancer to expose my app to the world. Once this is done deploying, I should be able to, I hope DigitalOcean is actually not having outage right now. That would suck. But once this deploys, I should see my app and I should be able to navigate to my app. So I'll just wait for this Terraform thing to deploy.
For the full course, visit courses.ardenlabs.com.